this week we have Alex Castañeda. He is an illustrator and fine artist based in California, and he's part of the Caffeine Heroes art collective. We're also joined by Alberto Ruiz, who is an independent figurative artist, sculptor, and teacher. He's based in Ecuador, and he's recently published a book called Mass and Line. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Great to see you. I'd like to ask about this book because you did tell me, Alex, recently that you did a brief testimonial in the Mass and Line book. So can you tell me about that first, and then I'll go to you, Alberto, to expand upon the book's content. So yeah, Alex, what was your testimonial? I mean, obviously I encourage people to buy it, and I'm going to leave link in the description below for people to go and seek that out and purchase it. But can you give us a...
My bad. This was a big project for Alberto. We worked with this guy called Spriden. I can never say his last name, but he does a lot of amazing art books. He's famous for his hardcover series, which is a series of erotic artworks. Artists like Kim Jin-ji and Ashley Wood and all those great folks are there, and we're there too. Hopefully we're cool enough, but anyways, Alberto came out with his solo book, and I was like, wow, that's awesome, dude. He just asked me to write a few words about his work, and I was like, of course, I was like very excited to do that.
I really believe that the world needed this book because it's at least on my end, the way I saw figure drawing develop. There's we have the academic world in which things are more linear, so to speak, more strict when it comes to measurement and when it comes to figure drawing itself. It's very much a lengthy and worth pursuing situation, but it's not as much fun, let's say, as the impromptu, the more what you call it, emotional, if you will, figure drawing that's done in 5 minutes, 10 minutes time. The live drawing, there's something about that, right? Not that live drawing is not pursued in academics. It is. It's actually the basis of it, but we don't, at least on my end, it's the work that I chose to do has more to do with the applied arts, like graphic design, character design, more. It is a little bit more commercial in the commercial end of it, but designing characters for games, for instance, that's all very valid, that those disciplines are at what I grew up with. Character design, animation, illustration, and the way I see it, that this is two avenues, right? A academic artist, the portraiture and so on and so forth, and then painting that almost always leads into painting and sculpting and more life for art's sake type of endeavors. And the other, the quick gesture, it's more something that we do in animation and in illustration. We do that more, and it's a different approaches to a degree, and not that one doesn't fit from the other, right? I do academic. I teach academic drawing, so to speak, in anatomy. Those principles exist, but this is a lot more fun, I believe, in the way I see it. Maybe academic people will actually not agree with me, but I'd rather do, as I said so much in my book, it would be great to do a portrait in charcoal or pen or pencil. It would take me 3-4 months to do, very painstaking but where's the fun in that? I mean, I don't want to sound like a killjoy for the academic, right? But that's worth pursuing. But I much rather have something done in 5 minutes, let's just say, or rather 10 minutes, and I will give you some samples of that. Or take it to a finish, so-called finish for me would be 3 hours tops, right? And painting is a totally different proposition, right? Which is what Alex does. In that sense, you know, one is not better than the other, or even there's no competition, but rather two different approaches, right? And none of them are, you know, less valid than the other. So when I said that this is a book that was due, that the world needed, not that the world needed it necessarily, because there's people are pursuing these things and there are books on the subject. But in my personal view, I wanted to expand on this two avenues. One is line drawing, which mostly is done for art, illustration, commercial art in general, right? And then the more heroic, more epic type of endeavors is shading, is tonal drawing, is painting. You know, it's more complex, right? So that's basically I just want to put it together and make sense in my own journey and the way I went about it, and hopefully someone will that is in students perhaps more to it's more sort of dedicated in the sense like it was more made for the student of the form that's thinking, you know, hey, where do I go from here, right? You can go line drawing, you can do, you know, quick studies, you can do gesture drawing, and that if you couple that with the solid teachings of academics like anatomy, you know, measurement, the way that we go about that, doing that in academics, then you can take it as far as you can. You know, there are some people, some of my students that do 3D, you know, sculpting, and some that just absolutely comics. You know, and then there's the guy who wants to pursue fine portraiture and painting. So one, you know, the labor in gesture drawing and what happens in gesture drawing can actually inform your academics training in the past if you want to pursue that. You know, they're both put together, so to speak, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, you look like you're dying to jump in, so please go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, judging by the type of artists you've been interviewing and talking about in your videos, I think Alberto is the perfect archetype for your list of artists, because like he was saying, like I enjoy academic art a lot too, but academic art can get very boring if everyone sticks to the book, let's just say. It's people like Alberto, people that they break a little bit the rules, that then it's fresh, you know what I mean? It's nice for the eye, and I think all the artists you work with have that kind of element to their work.
Yeah, well, I've got the impression that this is more for the upper intermediate advanced type of understanding of art, because quick gesture drawing is going to be very difficult for the beginner, and I would imagine that they need to start with the rules and then you can divert, because they're all branches of the same tree. But to understand gestural drawing, you have to have some kind of concept of proportion and foreshortening and perspective there and things like that. So I suppose, is your book kind of pitched towards the, you know, well-versed intermediate to the advanced, because mass and line is such a good name for people who understand the importance of both of those applications? Is that what you're aiming for?
Right. You're very, very close to it. In I see it actually the opposite way. I mean, there's no right way or wrong way to see it, but in the way I visualize this or think about this is, yes, that is true. The gesture drawing, the well done gesture drawing, that's a few lines and there's the essence of the pose, the essence of the individual or the action that we're doing, which is that ultimately the goal that we want to get to, right? Do less do a lot more with less, where you represent a couple of lines, a couple of if it's tonal value, a couple of shades there, and right there. If you, that's the goal, and that is difficult to obtain. I'm absolutely correct in that assessment. But to get there, other than just other than the knowledge on these other ways of doing the academics, there's also that if you think, for instance, let me jump onto this. If you find an animator, for instance, right? They are trained to figure drawing and do all the animals from buildings, anything, right? Comic books as well. But the animator, for instance, and this is where I take my cue, right, from animators. When I was struggling with my figure drawing, the way I saw this, it was like, I'm not going to make any progress, because you are absolutely right. It is difficult to express a lot more with less, right? The essence of the pose, how do you get to that? If you just do a couple of strokes and there it is, how to get to that? And I saw the animators drawing hundreds of pages per day, because they have to constantly go back and forth, move a little something and go back and forth. Then you start your sketching, trying to get the energy of the pose in a complex subject, like let's say a deer or a monster or something that's visioned for the imagination, has to be distilled to a few lines, mainly because of the way the medium works, right? It's not like you can't do something very complex in animation, but it's about money, it's about time, mostly, right? And those restrictions, if you will, or parameters, that does create this other monster, which is the animator, that has to basically distill and kind of simplify forms, right? So to working towards that, and then becoming really good at that 1, 2, 3. Here it is, right? A couple of strokes, lots of force, lots of power in the strokes, and then you get the essence of that pose. That it takes a lot of work, but also begins at drawing a lot. I mean, like, even if you were to take classes constantly, when people do, animators do, there's some animators that excel at this. And the ones who excel at this are the ones who are drawing forever, every day, just cranking up, drawing after drawing after the pose after pose, if they choose to do figure drawing, live, from reference, whatever, right? So I believe in speed for this as a requisite or prerequisite, if you will, to get to the point in which you can actually just make something flow. Because not necessarily for the sake of speed, but more so for the fact that your brain is working aside of your hand. You got that other stuff that you need, the hand-eye coordination and the observation, but when you are drawing so fast, like you're doing like a minute poses, what Castañeda does in his own work, like we do this drawing sessions, right? This quick gestures, 30 seconds or 1 minute or 2 minutes. What it does to your brain is informs not of a technical aspect, as very technical, as such as anatomy or even construction, the actual blocking in of the. You can't at 30 seconds or 1 minute. You don't have time for that. But what it does is not unlike a signature, let's say, right? When you are doctors, when you see the scribbles, and there it is, and it's like, yeah, I'm faking me, but you read, what is this? You can't make up, but they know, right? And you know that you are comprising, that this complex, the complexity of pose of the human body into a series of lines and or spots. Let's say if you do tonal drawing, and there it is. But for that to happen, you have to let your brain do the work, right? And so if you draw, that's where the animators thing came to me, right? Like I was struggling with figure drawing. I couldn't I had many books on anatomy, and all I did was look in close back. I thought, oh, all these Latin names and muscles and bones. My God, it's because I was not trained as an academic artist. I did go to art school, art high school for about a year, and I couldn't deal with it. But so anatomy is always like math. It used to be like learning a new language, very difficult, because it is a language, right? But what I'm proposing is, if you draw, not for the sake of speed, but if you constantly draw 5-minute poses, not even 1-minute poses, like we do with Alex and some of the sessions that he does. If you do enough of those, you learn form, which is different than anatomy, right? And I know plenty of artists, and I can name them, but I want right here. I don't want to embarrass them, by them, but I know plenty of artists who have, to this day, a very good friend of mine, who shall remain nameless for now, calls me and says, hey man, what muscle is that over there on the side of the leg? I see that plank there, I don't recognize that. And I'll give him the name, and I said, that's not a muscle. Let's say that's a connective tissue or whatever. This is my time to shine. I was like, okay, I'm gonna school this boy on this subject, and it looks really cool. And I end up looking like I know what I'm doing, what I'm saying. But he could draw better than me, the human form, right? He could draw, and he doesn't know a thing about anatomy, or let's just say that, because everyone knows what a biceps is, in regular terms. But if we were to ask him, what that muscle that's on the hip that connects to the whatever, to the femur and on the medial side of the leg, he was like, "Oh, medial, what is that? Where is that?" Right? But people who know anatomy was like, "Okay, medial is this, that, and the lateral will be the opposite on the other side." He doesn't know these things. He doesn't know the language. He could not tell whether you are talking about the superior, anterior. That will totally would blow him away. Now that you need to know, but he doesn't, because what he does is draws like crazy. His forte, if you will, is in animation, is in character design for games, is constantly drawing from life. So what he sees is a fast speed, captures the form. His brain is not thinking this is a femur or what have you. It's not thinking about that. I make a joke to my students. I constantly, when I first started, say like, by the time right now you don't even know what this tibialis anterior or posterior will be. But by the time you get out of my little crash course, what have you, you would know what the aponeurosis of the external oblique would be. And I look at me like, what the hell is he talking about? It's a different language, right? In a way, but it's not necessary for you to know exactly what that is, because if you know form, you can actually draw the human figure, male or female. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, if you say, okay, Albert, I love your classes, I love your, going to your, I learn a lot from the techniques of drawing and rendering and all that stuff. That's cool, because you need that. But when it comes to knowing or at least approaching the female form or the human form in general terms, if you just draw fast, tons, different poses, you get there. Now, obviously, if you have more information about what you're doing, and you'll be connecting him, but this friend does not know. It really does. And when you see his drawings, you think the guy is a master of anatomy, because what he sees is form, which is very different than understanding anatomy and the principles behind it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't know. Absolutely, the more you know, the more you get informed, and the more accurate your things are. Because if you know what's underneath and you know what makes it work, it just all helps you. There's a guy who says, a teacher that I know hasn't taught me, but I seen him in one of these YouTube, and says, You can't draw what you don't know. To a degree, that's true. But if you constantly see, let's say, the you get some porn from the internet and you just start drawing all every single look, you stop there, right there, the video, and you draw it, and then you keep going, and you do that 100 times a day, 200 poses in a matter of 2 weeks. At the beginning, your 2-minute drawings are gonna look like crap. Most of us are, right? At 2 minutes, you don't do anything. At 1 minute, you know. But as maybe you have an eye, just to manage to draw an eye if you're beginning, right? Because you still don't get that stuff about speed. But in time, it would be no different than you writing your name in cursive or signature. Because what we do is, if somebody asks you to type in your name or to write it in print, you would actually spell every letter and you draw every form of the R and all that stuff, and then you'll get it in readable and everything. But if you have no time for that, you probably will go cursive writing really quick, and there it is. And you know, the approaches are different, but your mind will actually loop it. You start getting looped. The more time, the less time you have. Somebody pointing a gun to your face, like, you gotta write this long word. And there's an eye for a gun that's like, come on, draw this scalifragilistic. I want you to write really quick. You're gonna go really fast. This is the same approach. Your brain is not gonna care. It's just gonna try to get that form that it sees there. So it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna get there. And it's the same thing. I believe. This is my belief, and that your brain, if you draw really fast and you have the form, you constantly, let's say you draw the same model, and it works usually with same models. Let's say sessions with the same. It has to be kind of the same model, because then you see the progress. She poses here, she turns around, then you draw it again really quick. You go on and you do a session of that. If you have different models, then you have different issues, because there'll be different builds, muscles in different places, chunkier here, skinner here, and tendons you'll see here and there. But if you do sessions with same model, let's say like we do with Alex, there is no way that your brain is not gonna simplify the form and come up with the actual form. In time, your brain will form a 3D space, a rendering in your mind of what it is or what you're doing, even if you don't know anatomy. That's my belief. I could be wrong, but that's how I learned. Sorry for the long-winded explanation, but this is the way my approach and how I got to it. So that's my experience. My journey is maybe slightly different than most, because if you're academic and you have formal education, you're gonna go through the formal things, or it's like writing. You have to choose it, or they will choose for you a type of calligraphy when you're a kid. When you're young. Where we had in down here in Ecuador, where I grew up, 2 systems. One was called the English calligraphy, and the other one was Palmer calligraphy. Both English, I believe, or I don't know. But in one, the letters were slightly different, but the result were the same, in a sense, like you join, there's a loop, and you continue. You don't have to lift your hand unless you change to another word or you stop the sentence, right? Which is the thing that we do when we draw really fast. So what if you don't have an option? Let's see, that was chosen for you. You're either English or Palmer. If you're in let's say Saudi Arabia, it will be a different type of, but there are ways to teach, because what we want is to teach the children a system that will be readable, and that all the people that also know the system, they will actually understand what you're right now. Because if you let anybody come up with their own little loops and stuff, it will be insane. Nobody will be able to understand what you're writing. So in my brain, I think that is, when it comes to drawing, it's necessary to come up with your own set of rules, or your own loops, your own connections to the different aspects of the human form. Therefore, you'll get something. So if I get a sample, so I'll show something later. But then when you do that, not only you are fostering the learning or let's say rather fostering will be the wrong word, but you are also not only learning the form, right? Even if you don't know what the muscle that you're drawing, right? But you're learning the form, and if you draw the pose and the woman poses for you or the man poses for you in a rotation type, you will learn how that muscle moves around in what, because that is one of the biggest problems we have is that the muscle looks like this in one thing, but once you turn, it's a totally different look, right? So if you constantly draw like this, you would definitely form will overtake anatomy, and it will be more powerful to a degree because what you're doing is drawing how something actually looks like, rather than that version of that you have of the atlas of the muscle that you know, right? Which can impede your progress because you already have an idea of what that muscle looks like. And since we normally learn from looking at other atlases or anatomy books, that is, if you don't train by drawing people in life, then it's a big disadvantage because you really can't see the way the muscles and bones will morph into creating these other forms. So the guy who draws form has to a degree an advantage. So when he does eventually go to anatomy, it's going to become a monster. That's my personal view, right? In my approach, then it's difficult to do that if you just go formal training because they're going to go about the same way I just told you. Right? They're going to show you the Palmer or the English way, and then your personal touch is not going to be there. It's going to be a little different.
Yeah, part of someone else's template, I suppose. I wanted to pose to you the same sort of question, I suppose, which is intermediate, advanced, and then beginner. It's kind of different considerations because intermediate is going to, I consider myself to be somewhat intermediate. I've got some amount of knowledge, which I think is a good amount, but I know that there's a lot missing. And that's what makes learning things so important, is knowing how much you've got to learn, I suppose. And the joy of that as well, when you've learned a certain amount, you've got some tools to bring in. But when it comes to doing gestural marks and things like that, how do you feel about because you teach as well, so you must have come across these people who they won't have ever drawn with their shoulder, so they don't know the joy of having that looser swoop and mark and rhythm and flow to the mark making, and they'll be very rigid and very small and maybe off to the edge of the page and things like that. So what's your feelings and thoughts about these, say 3 different categories of artists, the beginner, intermediate, and advanced?
Fascinating topic for me. So you say you had fine arts training, you've drawn with an easel?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something. I'm usually surrounded by people that do animation too. I'm near LA, and sometimes I work in LA. And the most people that I get are people that do digital art, so they work on a tablet, and or they draw on a sketchbook, and they never do the easel drawing. And whenever I have students, they complain about their shoulder hurting, because it's a muscle they never use. It's beautiful. Actually, one of the reasons ArtStation hired me a few years ago, it's because there was so many digital artists and they wanted a more traditional approach. And so that's why they hired me. Funny enough, I learned painting with Photoshop first, with digital painting first, because I could not afford the oils when I was a student. I would put a still life in front of me and I would paint it, and I would understand color that way through the color picker, how I went cooler and then warmer. Anyways, but I digress. I think the importance of this topic, I was thinking about this the other day, actually, and I agree with everything Alberto has been saying. Like, we are, very far off. We are almost the same people, the same person. You know what I mean? So the intermediate, I think, is the hardest part for sure. because you have so much information in you. Like I was thinking about children's drawing. You know, children's drawing, you see their lines, they're so pure and they're beautiful, you know, because they don't have, they're not being like, oh shoot, what's the proportion for the head? What's the proportion for this flower? They don't care. They just go for it, you know. It's something you see in Egon Schiller's work and Kent Williams' work and Alberto Ruiz' work, because you know they just don't care anymore. I mean, they do, but they don't. So I've made this comparison before that artists, in essence, are children. You know, we need to keep the children's heart all the time, because it is that wonder and that flow of things that is the pure essence of creativity, I believe. We as humans are so obsessed with control that's, I think, our downfall. We want to control everything, but it's actually like Alberto said, when you, okay, it's good to study anatomy, it's good to know, okay, this muscle is this, but when you're creating, you got to turn that off a little bit, you know. You're gonna be like, okay, cool, now let me flow, you know. The best work I've done is when I shut down my brain a little bit and I just let it flow. Of course, get into that flow state, okay, that's a journey. That's something that's you will enjoy in the end. But when you get there, you will enjoy it greatly. You know, it's a great joy. So it's worth pursuing it.
Yeah.
And if not, just do AI work, AI art, you know, just type it.
Take the shortcut, just save you a bit of brick wall.
But yeah, I mean, to me, it's fascinating how our beginning is very close to the end of the process. But the intermediate part is, I believe, the hardest part, where you have to delegate information, your brain do something else. And this does not only apply for art, this applies for everything we do. When you learn how to drive, when you start to learn how to drive, you get very tense. And, you know, you are just aware of everything mechanically. You're like, okay, I switch gears with this, signals, you know, your driving sucks because you're thinking about everything. When you already know that, you flow. And it's that flow state that really is art. That is art. It's the flow.
So you mentioned something that was quite interesting there, Alex, and it's actually a guy who I interviewed recently had said that he's an urban sketcher. He basically said that for his drawing, he tries to go from his eyes to his hand and bypass the brain, because his brain will make assumptions that are inaccurate, whereas his eyes can communicate to his hand an accuracy which his brain will try to interfere with and try to say, no, it'll be wider than that. Whereas in truth, he said, if you're foreshortening, cut it in half, because you're always going to add another half, and it's always smaller than you do it, and always go twice as dark as you're going to go. Be more confident, go darker. People always go too light, and it's good tips and things like that. Are there anything like that, Alberto, which you know, which are kind of barriers between the intermediate and the advanced, where people are hung up on hesitation and being kind of inhibited, where, as Alex was saying, the child in you is uninhibited and the professional is uninhibited because you have that flow state? Is there anything like that which you know of where you can say, this is what we need to achieve and this is why it stops us?
Yeah, I think, at least it's my personal experience, that the child quality that we sometimes we want in our work, and sometimes we don't even know we want that, but as we develop as artists, and I'm not saying that we just came to to master anything, because that's just an illusion, right? You're always searching and always. But if you get to a comfortable place, that usually is a danger. People often talk about that, right? That which ties to the original question, the first question that you had about the intermediate, right? The intermediate, it is the hardest position to be in my view, mainly because a lot of the epiphanies you got when you first began, it's not much different than a child. You know, you got a baby, and the baby does all these crazy stuff. Oh my God, it just talk, you just said mama, and then all these milestones keep piling up constantly, right? Those of you who have children know, Alex, and I have like 6, so I definitely know. Every time it's the same thing. The first few months, first 18 months, it's like full of discovery. I was like, oh, look what he did. And then at one point, he become 3 years old and no longer making crazy stuff. And because that's the intermediate part to us artists, right? Too, because at the beginning, everything seems wondrous. Oh my God, I discovered this and this is this. And then the discoveries and the epiphanies stop a little bit, or they become less and less and less as you are mastering your craft. And now you have the knowledge, right? Or you're acquiring the knowledge. And it's more difficult to have an idea that you're making progress. Am I making progress? I knew that before. I didn't know anything. Now I know about these things, and I felt like I was making progress at the beginning stage. You're making a lot of progress, and you make less progress. But that progress is actually, to me, is now back to your question. That's how it ties into your question now. It's like, it's full of these other things that you're going to encounter, which is, okay, do I now, and this is the most difficult or agonizing part for the student, is to understand it, when to turn this on and when to turn it off. More to the point is the way we children see something, like the eyes, right? You see that almond shape, and that's what they see. So if they are asked to draw a profile, they do exactly the same front eye, right? They do that, or the nose, that little pea-like shape sideways. They do that regardless whether it's profile or it's front, right? So there's a time in your drawing, in your quest for knowledge, while you drawing, that you're gonna be asked by the subject, the art, to go back to that stage, and when you're gonna chart-like draw it and do that, because that's the shape that you're confronted with, right? Your knowledge, your idea of that shape as a, let's say the buttocks, right? For instance, that, because we come across that all the time, figure drawing. You got that butterfly kind of look in there, and there are times you're not gonna see that. You're gonna see a square. You're gonna see a tire, a yo-yo, like, and depending on the lighting, you're gonna have to approach this sometimes absolutely in a realistic sort of way. Like, that is the shape that's built like, and then all the times that's gonna look like a square, something, or like a dice, or and you're gonna have to adapt. Sometimes it's gonna be very round. But our idea of the butt, let's say, right, is that of an oval-like, ovoid, circular thing. It feels like that. You put your hand there, you touch it. Let's say touch yourself, then that's not getting into other stuff. But let's say you visualize it and you see it as a round thing. That's what many artists will draw. Absolutely, 2 balls right there, right? Like all the rest. They will just draw 2 soccer balls, and that's the butt right there, right? Yeah. Because that's the idea that we have of it, right? As children, as you learn the forms, you realize, oh, this is not like that. This is this way, and then you have to adapt to that. And there will be times when you're required to go back to that childhood and draw exactly that abstraction that you learned, because it's needed. That's what's needed for that plan. The eye being that triangle, right? That's the easiest, let's say a profile. You have that triangle, but you're pointing towards the ear. You think like, okay, I draw that, and that is the eye, right? That's easy. But then there will be times in which, depending on the light, it's not going to look like that. So that is difficult for an artist a new artist to reconcile, where things are you're going to have to draw verbatim what you see. Some things you're going to have to go back to that child and depict the idea of that thing, right? Or sometimes, most often, you're going to go, like we had a conversation offline about the idea of that form that you already have, the notion of the eye being like this, or a thigh being this way, cylindrical things, and then you put it there, but then you have to modify it to accommodate for the differences in the model, right? So you can use those conceptions of those concepts of what you have, what you think things are, and then you have to go and disavow them, you destroy maybe even, you know, that notion in order to seek the truth and see what truly that form is doing at that time under these lighting conditions, under my own feelings at the time, right? My own mood at the time, or the mood of the subject that you're depicting. So because this is not an absolute technical 2 + 2 = 4 thing. It's very much subjective to your feelings, to her feelings, his feelings, the model, the time of day, what you're going through, perhaps, you know, mentally and emotionally. All those things have to have a very, you know, how you see this, right? Harold Speed had something where I read at 17. It made a profound impact on my work, in my learning, because I didn't even do much work there. But I remember reading that if you show an apple, you give this to an artist to draw an apple, they will draw an apple exactly as it is, and then somebody will you ask to describe the apple, they will say, well, it's a fruit, it's yellow or green, whatever. Yeah. And then somebody else will say, you know, that's hunger, that's I see envy, I see lust. So you know, some people, you know, it's so, art is like that, it's so subjective. So how do you depict love? How do you depict envy and all these qualities, right? And how do you put that in your work? And that is an intangible thing, right? So if you choose to, I'm telling everyone, all my artists, to, when you do the foreshortening, do exactly what you described, which is do it in half, because your brain is going to tell you, he knows this form is this long, usually, so your brain is going to want to interfere. Yeah. And just like when I tell you, and this goes against everything that I told you from the beginning, which is, if you do 5-minute drawings, you let your brain take over, right? Yeah. And there are going to be times in which you're going to have to shut your brain. Yeah. Because your brain knows something that it may not be true about this thing that you're doing right now. So you're absolutely correct on that. And then one of the things that I say, even more to the point of your question, is that what is it that you tell, that I personally tell? One of the things I tell is make the head smaller. And for most artists that are training, because one of the things, the head, usually when you draw the head first, I'm getting into the habit mostly is to draw the forms that are the bulkier forms, right? The thorax of the hips. Do it first, because the head somehow dictates the pace of the other elements. So if you make it too big, then you're gonna definitely run out of room, right? So when I say, like, if you must draw the head first, you should do it large, but if you must draw the head first, right, then draw it very small, a little smaller than you would, because that may dictate, right? If you're going by 8.5 heads or the typical, then you have to account for at least the pubic area. So if you have a standing pose, that's the first thing I tell them to do is, like, you got to do this. The standing pose, contrapposto, go half of the page if you're using the entire page, or whatever space that you're doing, and draw, make a mark for the pubic bone, because that might be the half typically, right? Of the, or at least ideally, and then you can elongate and make longer legs or whatnot, but at least you cover the top, the head, and then the feet are gone. So at least your drawing will be in the page. Guarantee that your drawing will be in the page. Usually people don't do that. They start with the head, and the head dictates. And by the time you're at the knees, like, oh my God, I know I'm gonna run out of room. For students, that usually is the case. So things like that, the foreshortening thing, it's actually absolutely, you were dead on that. That is the way the brain will tell you. Oh, I know this part. Not different than what I said about the butt. We know it's round. We know it's cushion, it's round, and so we draw a ball. We immediately go with the oval. When in fact, we have drawn many butts that are not round. They're actually solidly square or bulky or rectangular, depending on how the light and of the build of the human being. So
Yeah.
it will go against. It's like, what, a square butt or a square eye, for instance. I drew many irises, square. And if you see the book, and then actually very distinct, these shapes are not what they are. In Sargent and all of these guys who do realism, when you look at the eyes, they be diamond shapes in there. Shane Glines, somebody who I admire greatly, who does cartooning. There was a trick he had to do a triangle pointing downward, a very sharp triangle instead of the iris, instead of the round, and that read as a very as a light color eye for some reason, right?
Really?
For some reason, it read as it seemed like a snake eye, but when you read the drawing from far, it was cartoony. It reads absolutely brilliantly. You can tell, clear eyes, blue eyes, and whatever. Yeah. And there are things like that. Sculptors do it all the time. If they want to do, if you depending on the indentations, you can make bright eyes, like blue eyes or any color, with clay. So these things are not necessarily the way they are, the way you depict them. They're not necessarily the way they are in real life. No. And the opposite, there will be times when you have to be absolutely dead on and capturing that form, which is the classic. And sometimes you might have to go out and represent what you see. Now, the conundrum is, where is what? It's not like you always tell me to do that, but you said that. That's like, you know what I mean? It's like, you said it was a square. The eye is always, you can't draw a square all the time. Look at the form, look at the eye, and then you'll realize what's needed at a point, right? Yeah. So that if that answers your question, right? In a sense, it's the drawing, the pose, whatever is going to dictate what the measure that you take is, right? Going to be open for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've started to do myself on my channel, on my YouTube channel. I've started to do a bit of, because I do life drawing and I film it, and it's only 20-minute poses. But I thought, if I can communicate to an audience how I try to help myself get as much in as possible and still serve the drawing and not try to do too much where I run out of time, not try to do not enough where I've got this gesture drawing, and to add anything is to change the style. So what I've started to do is to do kind of a Barg method, similar to the sculpture that you're saying, how there used to be teaching of a Barg method, which is very angular, boxy kind of forms, but I do it with a light charcoal stick. So it's all very kind of boxy and everything. And then on top of that, I get the smoother forms. And then I add with the charcoal stick some texture for suggestion of tone. Is there any kind of stories you have, Alex, of when you've been teaching it all, where you've been trying to kind of go, how can I simplify this for someone who's at an intermediate level? They know a certain amount, but I'm trying to bridge this gap between knowledge and success, I suppose.
Yeah, I actually have that a lot. Part of being a teacher is observing what language the student speaks. Not every method is for everybody. I have a friend that has this saying, there's an ass for every chair. And so, like, I had a Canadian student. He came to me. He was like, Andrew Loomis. Andrew Loomis is a great artist and teacher, and he has great books. Like, I would recommend them for any beginner. But with this particular student, he was like, I don't understand the Andrew Loomis method for constructing the head. And he was going over it with me. I was helping him, but it was just not working for him. So I'm like, hey, listen, maybe the Andrew Loomis method is not for you. Maybe you have another way of seeing things. How about try this other way? Just I try to see what he likes, because we all lean towards things. It's the same question when a student asks for his style, like that big question, like a style, like it's you, your style is you. Like, we lean towards things because who we are, and so, yeah, it's like, I remember you know, Sean Cheatham, he's this, he was my painting teacher back in Lafa. He told me this story about this other teacher he had, that he was like, you know, there was this student, he couldn't draw with any method. So he was like, screw it, start from the eye and start, you know, start the head from there.
Yeah.
You know, it's counterintuitive for, it's not really, because a method is just a way to get there. That's
Yeah.
just one way. There's thousands of ways to get there, you know, and all of us are wired different. What works for someone not necessarily works for everybody. So as a teacher, you gotta be open minded to that nature. So I try to see that, you know, like for you, I know, like I had a student that was very into like cars and design and planes. So I talked to him about the feet, drawing the feet as two cars that were parked, and you were in the third floor. You were looking down at two cars that are parked. And he understood that.
Yeah.
You see, because his mind gravitates towards that.
Yeah.
So it's, if there's a method you're following and it doesn't work for you, next one, you know. Methods and teachers, it's a grocery store. Like if you go shopping and you know, well, apples are cheaper at this grocery store, so I'm gonna go there.
Yeah.
But you know, the bread is cheaper in this other store, so I'm gonna go there, you know. So methods and artists are like that. Just get what works for you and go to the next one, you know. It's basically how I see it.
That's a great analogy, because it's kind of like, well, the best bread is over there.
Yeah,
I want to go and get the best bread. I'm going to pay extra just to get the best bread. But yeah, it's true. I mean, my brother once, when I was at a gallery where he was, well, it's a museum actually, where he was teaching a drawing session for advanced drawers. And because my brother's a very professional artist, and he said to them all, I want you to go around the museum, find an object, look at it from the front, but draw it from the back. And I just thought it was such an interesting, unorthodox challenge for the artists. And it was great because people had to really consider the form in order to imagine what's happening around the back. So if it's a jug, you're like, well, if the handle's curving that way from here, then from the back, the handle's curving that way instead of that way. And it would be closer to me because the handle's slightly more round. You know, things like that, considerations where it's like, if you've learned this much, then here's the challenge, like really push yourself to go a bit further and do things a little bit less kind of obvious, I suppose, and less common to kind of go for. Is there anything where you think that unorthodox practices can really unlock kind of, you know, a more kind of standard or normal understanding of the world, but you do it through a kind of oblique angle in order to kind of just get past this issue with some people? Some people just have a blockage. I'll give you an example. I used to do a portrait drawing class and sit next to this elderly lady, and she'd been doing it for years and she wasn't getting any better. And I think it's because she was not being taught. She was just attending, enjoying the social aspect, but not really criticizing her own artwork. So when I sat next to her and I'd draw and she'd go, oh, you know what you're doing, don't you? And I was like, I kind of, you know, I'm hating my own drawing, going, that's not good enough. That's not dark enough. That's not right. Not in an unpleasant, hating it in a bad way. I mean, I'm kind of criticizing it heavily to go, I need to bridge the gap between me and the lady who's teaching, who turned out being my art mentor, because I thought, I really want to get better because I love this, but I love it. I don't want to love it as a hobby. I want to love it as a career. So for this elderly lady, I said to her, can I just show you what I'd do with your drawing? Do you mind if I draw on top of your drawing briefly? And she goes, yeah. And I got my darkest pencil and I was like, I'm going to put shadow here, shadow here, shadow here, and just strengthen the tones in these parts, just to show you how close you are to having something which really has a bit more impact. And it sometimes is just going for that more dynamic shadow and light contrast to describe atmosphere and kind of, you know, intensity. Is there any kind of experiences where you've had like that, where you think this person just needs to get past this barrier because they are just stopping themselves with uncertainty or just not being critical enough? I mean, can you kind of gift someone with self-criticism? Is that something you've ever been able to do, where you like critique your own work?
Interesting. It will all depend on the person. I have another story dealing with a 6-year-old lady. Back when I was in art school, I was seeing, so you have the very young innate talent. He's good at drawing. It's been good at drawing all his life. And you have this older lady. She never drew. She wants to be good. And she sucks right now. But then within the process of 5 years, I saw this lady surpass the innate talent of this young kid, because the young kid is like, hey, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I don't have to practice. She would practice every day. She would have a busy life, but she still, she wanted to improve really hard. And so she did. And I think, here's a quote. Words will not make the man understand. It takes the man to understand the words. So it is up to the student to snap and be like, I gotta do something. I gotta, maybe the lady that you were talking to, she just enjoyed, like you said, the social aspect of it.
Yeah.
She wasn't really, her desire was not really to improve. But yeah, I think that's what I see in that situation.
Yeah, I think you might be right there, actually. Is that something which you've experienced, Alberto, where it's some people it's just for the enjoyment, and other people it's for the kind of growth and advancement of their own understanding?
Oh, yeah. The way I've always seen it, and what I mean always, since I took this seriously, from the beginning, I thought that my goal was not necessarily be at this particular stage, although it would be good to have this mastery or close to mastery. So this mastery is kind of like a word that I always try to avoid. Let's just say, to be at a comfortable level, where I can actually move things around and know my subject. So even better than that, I thought, would be to be able to recognize my mistakes when I'm making, and be able to point them out and fix them, or at least see them, get to see them, because that is something that a lot of my students most of my students have to deal with, if not all of them, because I have to and you and me and Alex and whoever you'd say that. I just recently saw somebody a video in Instagram of a famous painter. Don't recall the name, but I think he must be famous. I don't know, but he was treated as he goes, oh, like, this guy is doing that, and he was saying something very cool, which is, when I'm happy, when I'm painting, maybe you're confident. When I'm happy, I make a lot of mistakes, but I'm painting, So I try not to be in that state of mind always when I'm painting, because I'm not critical of my own work. I'm just happy, and that is clear. Because somebody actually asked him, when would you realize that you're making more mistakes with it? And then he said, yeah, when I'm happy, or something to that effect. Because the state of mind is of elation, of joy, and I guess you let yourself go, and it just and sometimes you're not able to see the mistake. So he said, what I do often is to stop. I stop after a certain point, and then just go away from it. That's been always the rule. It's like, you, after a period of time, you don't go and hours on end, and at one point you have to go back and walk away and come back with fresh eyes, and you see it. It sounds like a cliche, but it's absolutely true. If you may be able to see it, but let's say as a whole, in a general aspect of what you do in art, more than anything, because it's different than if you carpentry, you can see the mistake, it's off, you can see it, you can measure.
Yeah.
Here is different. Here you're subjected to not just what you said, which is mood and your mental state. There are also other things that can impede you from seeing, stop you from seeing what the error is. And I often joke about this, and I tell my students that one of my biggest issues is to draw the head, the side of the head from the corner of the eye to the ear too short. It's mistakes that I'm aware of, and when I catch myself doing it, I stop. Sometimes gesture drawing, you can't stop, but you still make it. I still make the mistake, or the head too short from the bridge of the nose to the hairline. It may be too short. It's like I got almost the eyebrow. It's almost touching it, and then when I catch it, then I realize, I have that. I suffer from astigmatism and other maladies regarding the eyesight. So I know I'm going to have it, even if I do think it looks okay, I'm going to have problems because my vision is really messed up. So because I know this, and this goes back to an original question, one of the first questions you asked about, what is that you tell the students that want to give me an example of what to change and what not to do exactly. This is one of the things that I tell myself, right? Constantly. But the funny story is that I've been drawing for a long time, and I'm rendering now. I already did the preliminary drawing, the sketch. In that time, with the few lines that I put down, I wanted to be as expressive as possible, so I can capture the motion of the idea of the pose, the spirit of the pose, as Carganas like to say. So if I can capture that movement, that swing of the body, and that action, it's perfect. And then I go about it and try to render. My problem is that because I'm in the moment, I'm in the zone, and I got it all down. And I'm just now rendering, I'm putting down lots of pigment and making it 3D almost. And then my wife passes by, nonchalantly just passes by and goes from there to there and passes by where my table, and he goes, head is too big, keeps walking. It's like
that's her job though. That's her job.
That made his job, but it's like it just kills me because I'm already at a stage. But there's no come back. There's a point of no return where you're already rendering it. So there's many drawings that I've done that when I know that I can't see the mistake for whatever reason. Maybe it's my clinical the aspect of my condition, my eye condition, or it could be that I'm so in love, or maybe I'm super happy that, right? It could be I'm very happy, enjoying the moment, and then when she points it out, then I'm able to see it, not before. You know what I'm saying? And if I were to continue on and put it aside, as I always do the work and put it aside, then on my way back to the table, I'm definitely going to catch it. I'm going to catch it up that it's off, because the head is my Achilles tendon to make it sharp. And you can see that in the book, right? In the book, somebody wrote to me and said, "Oh, really beautiful praise for the book. Your book is amazing. I mean, I know you're a graphic designer because the design is crazy. You crop the way you crop the images." And at that point, I thought, I really thought about that when he said that. The way you crop the image, some, you went from the eye. Some you cut the eyes all together, and you crop it on the other part. What he doesn't know is that some of his drawings actually started in the wrong place, or the heads got chopped because they don't look any good because the hairline is right there. So I chopped it right there, but they look dynamic and they look amazing. But he did, obviously, I didn't tell him that. Now, if he's looking at this video, he's probably saying, "Motherfucker, I knew it. I knew it. It can't be that good. That guy cannot be that good to do." Right, but that is absolutely true. Yeah. Not all of the cover, but now when I realized that was a mistake, that my mistakes were there, and then when I put the actual art in the book, the editor didn't find a problem with it, so he puts them there. And I realized when he gave me one of the dummies of the book, and I saw all this stuff, I was absolutely impressed by my own work, my own design, what you call it, skills of cropping this and right there, and dynamic and crazy. It's just like so crazy. It comes out from the edge out there in brutally, especially the ones that double page.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that got the worst thing, was cutting in the ear and stuff like that. And I was like, and they look so amazing, going, hell yeah, I did that. Then some of those suffering. On the other side, right? Check this out. On the other side, when I saw these mistakes turning into absolute works of art, then I realized, wait a minute, I'm onto something here, right? And then I went on purpose and I did that to some drawings. And I also saw the idea that once you get a double page, it's cinematic, and it's like, okay, so how do I make this? In my mind, there's a relation that when it comes to design that I like to, I often call it to myself, right? Nobody knows this. I call it the pathmark experience, the pathmark road to design. And Pathmark was a supermarket chain back in the 80s in East Coast. So you can see when I moved to New York, the first thing that caught my eye was the gigantic signs and trucks and the billboards and stuff, because I wasn't used to that in Ecuador. So one of the first things I saw was a Pathmark truck, an 18-wheeler with Pathmark on it, gigantic, and it was to get the illusion of a bigger name. It was kind of tilted, so they can make the most of the names, or they can go across. Because if they wrote it just like that, it would not be as gigantic. Yeah. And Americans love everything to be big. You know what I'm talking about. It's like got to be Rushmore, Mount Rushmore, everything, right? Like Statue of Liberty, everything. So this thing, not that I haven't seen this, but seeing it in the truck, seeing it live, seeing it being right in front of it, and that is one of the approaches for me to crop things so they can have this bigger than life type of effect. So in essence, you going through the book, you see the small, tiny design, this drawing, very minute compared to the page, right? In a corner or something, and it just plays accordingly to the ratio, the golden ratio and whatnot. And then as you turn the page, the double spread of something that's coming off the page because the edges have been cut of the head, and then legs are cut and things are cut, but the brain will fill in the rest, right? And it's just so majestic. So that's the thing that one of the things that I picked up from the errors.
Yeah, the printing process.
Right. So in the design process, now I'm going on purpose to cut this, crop them in a way. So to a degree, he was right and he was wrong. He was right in the sense like, yeah, I did that to some drawings, but some others, and he can't tell now because now I did it on purpose, and now it's something different, right? But most of them, somebody bought a drawing. Let's just I say a good friend of mine that I love. He bought one of the drawings, and that drawing I have fixed. When I say fixed, it's like the drawing was cut. The head was. I did the body, and it was perfect for me. Just I got the right. And then the head, I got. Oh my God, the head got. My wife came by. It's like the head's too short. It's too small, or the top of the head small. The parts are like the head, add more head. And then, because she says that, and it just keeps on like nothing happened. It just stunned me already. I was like, oh. So now I go into the drawing, and I add the head. I draw the rest of the head, the top. I'm going to include this in the book. Fuck, this is a good drawing. I cannot not put it there.
Yeah.
And so I go take another piece of paper, put it on top, draw and scan it in, stitch it in Photoshop, and it goes in there. Then a friend of mine sees the drawing and said, I want to buy that from you. I give you $300. And I go like, sure, man, I need the money. And I sold it to him. Then I was like, oh shit, that's the one with the head. That's the one missing the head. So what I did and what I'm doing, he hasn't gotten the book yet, the drawing yet. And if he probably, when he sees this, he might be too late. He already got, I'm gonna send it him in a couple of weeks. So depending on where you post it, it's really
You've got time, you're fine.
yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm redrawing it. I'm giving him the original and I'm redrawing it in a bigger page paper and I'm giving them both.
Yeah.
The original because he wanted the original. And that is included in the book, by the way. And it's just now, it's going to be an Easter egg for people to find out which one.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I haven't been a graphic designer, right? And this is the part that not makes me different necessarily than others, but definitely it's a different take. Which is, you probably looking at the clock. I'm going to be brief. It's the part in which I, as a graphic designer, I work for print. I work to the ultimate, which is how it's going to look on print. So to that end, I still have that in me, right? So I'm thinking print, I'm thinking design, graphic design. And so to that effect, I'm going to bend the rules. I'm going to cheat and lie and try to manipulate things so I can get there in a sense, right? It'll be difficult to spot the addition of the editing.
Yeah.
So the damage is done. I already spoke to my friend. In my mind, I'm just an honest mistake. That sort of stuff. But that pretty much sums it up. Finding your mistake.
Well, I wanted to quickly ask, because I haven't actually asked this on this conversation. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about Caffeine Heroes? So I should have asked you more about that.
Yeah. Well, it's basically figure drawing sessions that we do locally and through Zoom now. And yeah, like I mentioned, we had like great artists like Alberto Ruiz be our guests from all over the world, from Japan, from Europe, or should I say Asia, Europe. And yeah, I mean, figure drawing, it's a way of life for me. I need to do it. We need to do it to be in shape, keep the art muscles going. So I cannot preach it enough. And as you see, Alberto, and like it's something, it is part of who we are. It's not just a separate thing.
Yeah.
So
how long has it been going for? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. Well, I've been doing Caffeine Heroes for 13 years almost, and but the Zoom figure drawing is new. So this whole aspect of what the pandemic gave us, I think it's great. The Zoom things, Zoom events.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we'll have you in one of these.
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, if someone's watching this and they'd like to join the group to draw, how do they go about joining Caffeine Heroes for the session?
The one social media I use the most is Instagram. So if you go to Instagram and you look for Caffeine_Heroes, you will find the Instagram page, and we post all the events there. We are shadow banned because Instagram doesn't like butts, so you need to type the whole thing, Caffeine_Heroes.
Wow. Well, I'll be leaving the link in the description below. I'll also make sure that it's on the screen so that people can see it. Are there any events that you'd like to promote? I'll start with you, Alex. Is there any events that you want to promote, or what social media should people check you out on? Any exhibitions or anything going on?
No shows so far. But yeah, just check for the Caffeine Heroes events. I talk with the students and people that are around me to get the dates for the next months. So just keep an eye out, and if you join, you might find Alberto there too. You can. It's one of the cool aspects of Zoom. Like you're drawing the model, but also you are surrounded by amazing artists. Sometimes they join and they're like, "Oh shoot, this artist here? Yeah, I'm like, yeah. They say hi, and it's just cool, you know.
So yeah, and you're also your personal Instagram, which I definitely will direct people to as well, because you've got an incredible account, which I love looking at. Amazing work on there. So that'll be linked in the description below. Alberto, is there any events or exhibitions or social media you want to announce for people to go and check out and support your work? Oh, you're muted at the moment. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying I don't have any events, and I rarely do go out of the house. That's I always think we have my wife and I have 4 children, and it's difficult for us to leave. Now, also because I don't live in the States, I don't go out to conventions. You used to do that all the time, but it's different here. There's not much activity here when it comes to artistic stuff, and figure drawing in small countries like this. It's actually frowned upon a little bit, if I must say. It's like it's not. Yeah, it's not a it's considered, I don't know, erotic art or something, that some weird stuff, and so it's very rare to find groups that I used to have a group, but we at the beginning we got like 3 people, and then we started dwindling, and then so it's like, okay, it's really not that much help. So I personally don't go out much, and I don't have anything coming. I may be in New York in June. Definitely, and I will announce that on my Instagram. So if you want to catch me, you can always catch me on Instagram. However, I must say that if you didn't get my book, if I may say this,
absolutely,
plug the book, because I do have a few copies of the book in New York City now, and my daughter is helping me moving them. So if it's 15 of mid of June, I definitely will have some copies for anyone who's interested. And the difference between me selling the book in another in a bookstore would be that I'll pair the book with an original drawing, one of the ones you see here, and I offer it a very cool price, so anyone can afford it. So that would be.
I'll tell you that. Yeah. I'll definitely be buying one.
There you go. So that will be it. I mean, other than that, I'll stay home and then have a good time.
Excellent. Well, the links for the book and for your Instagram will be in the description of this video. I want to thank you both so much for being so generous with your time. It's been a real privilege to talk to you. Your work is absolutely incredible. Thank you very much for being on the program.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Thank you for calling.